Ladies and gentlemen, from Newsweek, India-Pakistan 125 jets clash in one of the largest dogfights in recent history. They are saying this is one of the biggest dogfights since World War II. Okay, so India and Pakistan are going to war. How you guys doing?
Well, I know defense contractors here in the United States have a hard-on right now. All the Palestine simps have moved on to Pakistan. So Palestine, those people are going to be forgotten about here very shortly.
Isn't it crazy how the narrative just automatically repeats? Soon you're going to hear Pakistan is actually an open-air prison.
Right. Well, I'm waiting on the Pakistan Ministry of Health to say, 15,000 children are now dead. You know, like that.
No, that's already been coming out.
Do you know about how Pakistan came to be? It was under colonization, and then there was the two-state solution. The Muslim majority nation divided from the Hindu majority nation. Now they're
slaughtering Hindus.
Yeah, it's funny.
Christian churches. Yeah.
People are pointing out the similarities between Israel and Gaza with India, Pakistan.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's not like they're really one for one, but there are similarities based on like colonial rule, two-state solutions. And but now we have two nuclear-armed nations, and they're getting into dogfights. So,
So is that why I'm supposed to care? Besides the fact that this
I care
is like
because
pretty
of
crazy.
Islam.
Look, well,
There's a lot of Islam that has to do with this. Like,
well, it started because jihadis killed a bunch of people.
right, and they have terror cells all set up in India, and they've been doing this over and over again until India's like, we've had enough, right?
it's been happening for a long time.
A very long time,
People don't admit that, yeah.
and people have no idea about it. If you want to follow anybody or learn about it, go to Amy Meck Rare RAIR web. Like her website's awesome, but that's really the issue. And I think that Americans really don't understand unless you've been to Europe and see what's really going on in there, how terrible the Islamization of the West is. And they just want to take over everything. No matter where they are, they want to take over everything, and they do it violently. And I think people forget that sometimes. And that's a big part of this problem right now.
How many of the Pakistanis in the UK are going back to fight for their homeland? Have you seen any? Have we heard any of that going on yet?
No, they're just too busy doing
But what do you mean? They are fighting for their homeland.
They're all in Belgium.
In the UK.
In the UK. Oh, well, they're fighting to take over somebody else's homeland.
Yeah,
Well,
they're in Belgium and France.
That's
rioting.
what their cause is.
Right. So,
The concern is that if India escalates, if this escalates between the two nations, Pakistan has no chance against India's army. So the fear is they'll resort to low yield nukes. They don't have high yield. But India will then immediately retaliate with their low-yield nukes. China has a stake in Kashmir as well, and then China is going to get involved. It does seem fairly isolated between the two, but India is part of the BRICS nation, so they may call for assistance, and then we'll see what happens. World War III.
We say World War III, but luckily I do feel pretty good with having J.D. Vance coming out today saying like, "What? This is not our problem.
It's not our
gonna
problem."
get
But if
involved."
China gets involved, it can easily draw the rest of the world in.
Sure. Well, all I'm saying is that we don't have somebody like Joe Biden or Kamala that is directly controlled by the military-industrial complex that is itching to get into another war, especially one that has nuclear powers involved.
Here's an issue I see. People tend to think if it happened before, that is what is required for it to happen again. So with World War I, you had European nations conflicted and alliances. World War II, you obviously have Germany and all that stuff and alliances. World War III doesn't need to be the same exact thing. World War I and II are basically the same war. World War III could literally be Russia's currently at war in Ukraine. The U.S. and Europe are basically funding in a proxy war with Russia through Ukraine. Israel's at war with Hamas, Lebanon, Iran, the Houthi rebels. List goes on. You then have China attacking the South China Sea. World War III could literally just, at one point, we go, hey, I think at this point, with 6-7 active wars, the world is at war. And then the question is, who is supporting who? So the U.S. is providing funding to Israel. The U.S. is providing is more aligned with India, Israel and India and Ukraine. So the U.S. is actively involved. Then you're going to end up with China being involved in much the same way. Then you'll end up with more proxy wars happening in other parts of the world. And then eventually everyone goes, hey, I kind of think everyone's fighting each other and it's World War III.
You know, it was Joel Berry, and I'm going to read it now, put out a good tweet that reminded me of this. He goes, is it a coincidence that Pakistan, a close ally of China, went to war with India just a couple weeks after America elected to move our Chinese manufacturing to India? Like, China definitely has their hands in all this.
China absolutely has their hand.
And then
if you follow the Chinese propaganda accounts, state propaganda accounts on X, they've already been tweeting that they're supporting Pakistan.
Yep. Yep.
So, in World War II, for instance, you had the North African Front. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure Germany and Japan never actually physically interacted with each other. Japan was the other side of the planet.
Right.
Germany was occupied in Europe. If we had a World War III, it doesn't have to be a catalyst event where one country does one thing, resulting in every country going to arms. It could literally just be, at this point, we've got India, Pakistan, Russia, Ukraine, and the Israeli conflicts. If China escalates in the South China Sea, we could be dealing with 4 different regions erupting in war. Mm-hmm. At what point do we say the world is at war? When South America gets involved?
It's really when one of the major powers is like, if France was at war, we were at war.
We are, though.
No, but like active conflict, I think is what people think of it. But I think that we're already at war in multiple ways. I think war will look different too. It's not going to, I don't think it'll ever be really boots on the ground in the trenches like it was in World War I and II. I think that people, that's what they think of when they think, are we at war or not? But
so
we're in a
I'm
different kind
curious,
of war.
just as more of an opinion question here for the group. At what point, because it seems like the majority of the MAGA voting base, and Trump ran on this platform that he didn't have any new wars during his first term. The world was seemingly at peace for the most part during his first term. At what point could you convince the American people to say, okay, maybe we should get involved in this?
When something would happen on our homeland.
Okay, yeah.
That's when.
I think
so
if there were an attack on a U.S. aircraft carrier, I think that would
Not
convince a position that would convince a portion. If there were an attack on a U.S. aircraft carrier in international waters,
by who?
And Americans died,
It would have
I
to
don't
be significant.
know. I'm not going to get down to extremely specific, but I think that would get the people that are anti-war. It wouldn't get the America First people. It wouldn't get people like J.D. Vance to be like, yeah, we got to do it. But it would get a lot of normies that are not politically connected or politically aware into it.
Right.
And I'm anti-war. Like I don't want to be giving our money to anywhere. But if you start killing our people, I get a little juiced. I get a little like, let's go retaliate as hard as we can. Like I definitely fall into that trap. But for the most part, I don't want to be involved in other people's conflicts. Right. I certainly don't want any money going over there.
Well, I think that it's reasonable to say, well, if someone attacks a U.S. military assets like an aircraft carrier or like an aircraft carrier strike group, because there's more than just a carrier, that does involve us, that they're bringing us into it.
I agree. And I don't want to hear why. Why did they do it? Like,
I don't
hear
care.
all these people say why, because those people were persecuted, so they felt like they had to. No, I don't care.
But
I don't want the answer to why.
Especially if it's not a place that we're shooting. So, for instance, right? So the Houthis got a lucky shot and hit an aircraft carrier. I don't think we should go and try to invade Yemen for that, right?
No.
That's why I asked that question. Yeah.
But if we're in the South China Sea and we're around India or around that, and we have an aircraft carrier around that area, and China takes a shot at an aircraft carrier, I think that would be something like, okay, well now this has changed the whole dynamic.
But I think it has to be significant. They can't just like take a shot. They would have to sink the whole thing.
I wouldn't say sink it, but if they hit it and killed, look, there's 3,000 people on an aircraft carrier. If they hit an aircraft carrier and 15 people die, I think that's going to be enough for Americans to be like, you did what?
I don't think that would be. I think it would have to be hundreds.
Either way, it's semantics we're arguing.
Yeah. Anyway, you asked.
No, I didn't. It was a good answer. You had a good answer. But it's going to be very, very difficult. Even if China were to get involved for some reason, it's going to be very difficult, in my opinion, to convince the American people that we need to get involved in a conflict between India and Pakistan. The most of the contact that people here in the U.S. have with Indians are when they get called on their phones for some Apple support scam, and that's it. That's all they know about India. So we don't need any more of that.
Yeah, I don't.
We were making thumbnails for the videos, and I was talking to our graphics team, and I was like, what the hardest thing about this is? Pakistani and Indian soldiers do not look cool. Like with Ukraine, with Russia, you've got dudes that look like they're decked out and ready for a war. And then you look up these images of the Indian army and the Pakistan army, and they look like they just showed up from the first day of work,
Ukraine and Israel also have these TikTok thoughts that are posting thirst traps, getting our.
The U.S. does that too.
Good grief.
Yeah,
it's true.
And there are dumb guys who fall for it. What was the story? Bunker bunnies or something? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
What?
This is not U.S., right?
U.S. propaganda.
Luhan chick?
Yeah.
So U.S. propaganda, they've created these ideas that there are women who are like single and in the barracks who are like bang a bunch of dudes to trick young incel guys into joining the military thinking they're going to get laid.
The girl's really hot. She's really hot.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
It's not entirely divorced from reality. Like, I'm sure that goes on.
Yeah. And then there's
That's why
stories
women
about
shouldn't be there at all.
there's stories about how women will get orders for deployment and get pregnant right away.
It's all a big scam. It's a racket.
Yeah, shouldn't be there. No women in the military either, guys.
But not even administrative roles.
No.
What about janitorial?
Paperwork is
What about making
Janitorial.
What about making sandwiches?
Guys, come on. They're a distraction. No. They're catty. They're passive aggressive. No.
We go full Sparta.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.